Attorney and also the Vice Chair of the Appalachia HIDA Board of Directors. To my right and your left, Simon Byrne, the Director of the Crime Task Force here in Anderson County. Behind me, Frank Hara, the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Nashville Field Division. Sheriff Russell Barker, Anderson County. Oak Ridge Police Captain Mike Ewer. The Appalachian HIDA Tennessee Coordinator Monty Houck. Looked the wrong way, didn't I? The ATF Knoxville Resident Agent in charge, Keith Jordan. The Rocky Top Police Chief, Jim Shetterly. The Clinton Police Chief, Vaughn Becker. The Oliver Springs Police Chief, Kenny Morgan. UT Law Enforcement Innovation Center Executive Director Rick Scarborough. Rick, thank you for being here. Mayor Terry Frank of Anderson County is with us today. Commissioners Robert Jameson, Shane Vowell, and Teresa Scott are also with us. Thank you all for being here. We have Chief Deputy Galloway of the Anderson County Sheriff's Office also joining us, and Roger Houck, the Clinton City Manager. Thank you, Roger, for coming. So I appreciate all of you being here for our conference today. We've got great news. We're here to announce the good news that as a result of a 2-year effort by Anderson County Law Enforcement Command staff, we have received a designation by the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy that Anderson County is now a HIDA county. That's HIDTA, which is an acronym that stands for a High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. HIDA is a federal program that was created in 1988 to align resources and funding to address high-intensity drug trafficking areas. This designation comes as a result of a 2-year effort by your law enforcement command staff and formal applications that were submitted to HIDA and ultimately to the White House for this designation. Those applications were based primarily on 2 factors. One, the presence of I-75 in Anderson County, and the demonstrated success of our existing crime task force in attacking narcotics issues. HIDA designated counties exist across the country. They are essentially a means to define the area in which grant spending can occur for HIDA-funded task forces. For instance, here in East Tennessee, the DEA and the FBI both operate HIDA task forces. Most of the counties in the metropolitan Knoxville area are HIDA counties. The HIDA program across the country is managed by regional headquarters. Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia are all under the umbrella of Appalachia HIDA, which is headquartered in Kentucky. All of you should have an Appalachia HIDA area map in your materials. So we applied for this HIDA designation and frankly worked pretty hard to get it. But that was not our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal was to obtain funding and resources to establish a HIDA-sanctioned task force here in Anderson County. HIDA funding of task forces is done annually, and so we have received news through the Office of National Drug Control Policy as part of the White House that Anderson County was selected not only as a HIDA county, but that our task force has been selected as a HIDA task force. The task force I'm talking about is the 7th Crime Task Force. It exists as part of a judicial district in Tennessee. That is the entity that applied for this funding. No HIDA task force can exist without a federal law enforcement partner. And in this case, we consulted area law enforcement agencies and worked with them, and as a result of that process, determined that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF, was willing to partner with us and assign an agent full-time to our task force should HIDA designation and funding be received. This was a cooperative effort and was endorsed throughout by U.S. Attorney Overbay, the FBI, the DEA, and the ATF all joined in our application, as did the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And we are grateful to all of them for their support throughout this process. The designation of Anderson County as a HIDTA county actually occurred in September, but we had delayed making that announcement until we received the news that we had received funding and designation as a HIDTA task force. So what does it mean to be designated as a HIDTA task force? Well, to us, we anticipate that's going to mean, first and foremost, the ability to work daily with the ATF, to learn from their agents, to receive the benefit of some of their criminal intelligence, and for our agents to have that hands-on experience. As a result of this designation, we expect our agents will be part of training efforts that exist through HIDTA, that we will have the benefit of criminal intelligence specialists, IT professionals, and other human resources that exist at the Kentucky headquarters for Appalachia HIDTA. It means that we will have access to HIDTA covert equipment. And it means that we will be joining a network of other HIDTA task forces that may assist one another in law enforcement efforts when they take us in other areas of the country or when other HIDTA task forces have issues here in our neck of the woods. HIDTA designation also means funding. And with that designation, we received a grant. As a result of this grant, we will have access to funding for overtime for agents, money for travel, law enforcement equipment, and money to run undercover operations. It's exciting news for us here in Anderson County and comes as a result of some special folks. I'm very proud of our law enforcement leaders in Anderson County. They're a group of people that believe that we work best when we work together, and they have exhibited that teamwork in the past, and we expect that this HIDTA designation will essentially mean that we can take that same cooperative approach and extend it to new partners and new cases. I would like to recognize and issue particular thanks to Lieutenant Daniel Alexander of the Clinton Police Department. Lieutenant Alexander played a very large role in preparing our application in our most recent effort to receive this HIDTA designation. And to Chief Vaughn Becker of the Clinton Police Department, who was sort of the quarterback of our most recent effort. And also to former Clinton Police Chief Rick Scarborough, who was instrumental in moving us toward this original concept of pursuing a HIDTA task force here in Anderson County. In addition, we are particularly grateful to the ATF and to U.S. Attorney Overbay, both of whom hung in there with us and supported this effort through this 2-year process. And finally, we need to acknowledge and thank our legislative delegation, most notably Senator Alexander and Representative Fleischman, both of whom were supportive in our effort once our application reached the White House. It may not be immediately apparent, but this was an innovative initiative. This is the first locally led drug task force that has received HIDTA designation in the state of Tennessee. And I'm very proud of our leadership team for thinking outside the box and looking for smart ways to make our community safer and to be good stewards of our public tax dollars. In short, from the perspective of citizens, we believe that this has a strong potential to make Anderson County a better and safer place to live. It will assist us in our law enforcement efforts in driving crime out of our communities. Thank you all for being here, and I want to take an opportunity to acknowledge a few other folks that will share a few words with us. I'd like to call on U.S. Attorney Doug Overbay, if he would.
General Clark, thank you very much for your words and your explanation, and very much for the invitation to join with you and other members of the Anderson County government and local law enforcement and our federal partners from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive. It's a great honor and privilege to be here with you today. And I suppose I'm wearing really two hats. One as the incoming chairman of Appalachian HIDTA, along with Monty Houck, our Tennessee coordinator representing We both represent HIDA, and also as the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Tennessee. Two members of our staff are here, David Jennings, our criminal chief is here, and Rochelle Barnes, our community law enforcement coordinator, is here as well. But this is a great day to be here. When I took office about 25 months ago, one of the first questions I was asked as the new United States Attorney is whether I would support Anderson County's application to become a HIDA designated county. Well, 25 months ago, I didn't know what a HIDA was, much less know how to support its application. Over that period of time, I have quickly learned and have become quite excited about the HIDA program and what it means to our local communities and to our partnerships on a federal, state, and local level working together. But I readily agreed to support Anderson County's application. One reason, General Clark, as you alluded to, if you look at the map, Anderson County almost appeared to be the whole of the donut. All the donut were all Appalachian HIDA designated counties except for Anderson County. And you look at that and you have to scratch your head and wonder why, because as you said, with Interstate 75, with I-40 adjacent to you, with all of the being a part of the greater East Tennessee community, drug traffickers don't know county lines. And they don't care which county they're in. They just care about the sale and marketing of illicit drugs. So it makes every sense in the world for Anderson County to become a part of Appalachian HIDA and to be designated as a county. Now, General Clark alluded a little bit to the work required to become so designated, and he talked about how it took a 2-year period to do that. Let me drill down in that just a little bit. This year, the Office of National Drug Control Policy, a part of the White House, only approved 13 counties to be designated as a part of HIDAs all across the United States of America. Only 13 out of all the applications they had received. 3 of those counties were designated for Appalachian high-intensity drug trafficking area. I think a recognition of the problem that we face in this part of the country, but it also means this was a big accomplishment for Anderson County and our law enforcement partners who put together this task force to be one of only 13 counties approved to be new HIDA designated counties. A big accomplishment, and with it, this accomplishment comes resources. The Executive Board of Appalachian HIDA has designated $132,500 to fund the task force. In addition to that, $20,000 worth of equipment has already been provided. In addition to that, there will be training opportunities. And going back to my days in the Tennessee General Assembly, when we talked about one-time funds and recurring funds, the $132,500 is not one-time funds. That is recurring funding going forward. This is a major accomplishment for your area and Sheriff, for everybody that had a hand in putting this application together. So I am here to say congratulations, and also to say how much we appreciate our law enforcement partners. Attorney General Barr, and before him Attorney General Sessions, all have emphasized together the importance of our partnerships and pointing out that 85% of all law enforcement is local. So in our office, we look forward to working with and supporting our state and local partners, as well as our federal partners, as you see here from the alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosive. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and again, congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank
So next I wanted to ask our task force director just to say a few words. As I had introduced him earlier, his name is Simon Byrne. He is a deputy with the Sheriff's Department, but was selected by all of our law enforcement leaders to run our task force in its day-to-day operations. We have great confidence and we're very proud of him and what he's accomplished. Director Byrne.
So I just wanted to give you guys kind of an overview of what the task force's makeup is. First, the task force, both locally as well as now under the HIDA task force, is governed by a board of directors. The board of directors are up here, or the representatives have showed up today. They're ultimately the ones who make a lot of the big picture decisions. Under the board of directors is myself as the director, who makes a lot of the day-to-day calls about how we work and what we do. The 7th Crime Task Force is a drug and violent crime task force, which is unique to Tennessee. There's only a few of us task forces that are drug and violent crime task forces. Most of them are just focused on narcotics. As far as the day-to-day makeup goes, there are 7 full-time narcotic investigators. Those full-time narcotic investigators come from 3 of the agencies that are standing up here behind me. I myself are a narcotics investigator by trade, but we try not to pigeonhole ourselves because we recognize drug crime and violent crime go hand in hand, so we try to approach the issue from both sides. There are several CID agents assigned to us from different departments, again from the department standing behind me, who go out and work all the violent crimes that occur in Anderson County. Of course, all us narcotics investigators wear 2 hats, and we help follow up on all these violent crimes, as well as utilize a resource that's pretty unique to this area, which is the crime scene truck, which contains top-of-the-line, cutting-edge technology in order to help process crime scenes in and around Anderson County. I know not just our local agencies benefit from this, but also the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations benefits as well, as we've had a couple cases that have come up locally in Anderson County, and we've deployed that on scene so they could utilize that technology. Now that we're becoming a HIDA task force, what we look forward to most is the ATF has graciously agreed to assign us a full-time agent from the ATF, so we'll have that federal component with us on a daily basis. So rather than the federal agencies coming in and adopting cases on the back end, it's going to be absolutely advantageous to have a federal agency there from moment 1 of a case, so they can guide and make sure that we're checking all the boxes that the U.S. Attorney's Office needs in order to prosecute someone federally when deemed appropriate by our state district attorney, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office. Again, I really want to extend my thanks to the ATF, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and especially my board of directors here that has supported this and recognized that narcotics problems aren't just unique and stop at city limits or county limits. Rather, they extend far and wide past counties and cities, and so we need that collaboration in order to help address the need for the narcotics cases, to work all the narcotic cases that are in Anderson County and certainly lead outside of it.
Well, you've heard several people mention in glowing terms the ATF, and we're joined today by Frank Hara, who I introduced just a moment ago. Agent Hara is the special agent in charge, or assistant special agent in charge of the Nashville Field Division, where he has traveled today to join us. Frank, we're happy to have you here, and if you would say a few words.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Frank Hara. I'll spell it for you, H-A-E-R-A. As General Clark said, I'm the ASAC for ATF in Nashville, and I oversee the Knoxville area here with ATF. So we're happy that we're partnering up with everybody. Everybody standing behind me is a mixture of state and local officers and agents and prosecutors. I want to thank the Sheriff of Anderson County, and it has been a long process to get this going. But you may be wondering, why is ATF involved in narcotics trafficking? Well, any good drug dealer carries a firearm with them to protect their assets and their drugs. So I can tell you that we're going to bring in our assets, crime gun intelligence. We're going to certainly leverage all of our partnerships here. We've created a strong coalition here. Some people may be prosecuted in the state, some people may be prosecuted federally. It just happens to be what the person chose to do. I could tell you that we'll bring our resources in here. and attack these groups in here as best we can and as aggressively as we can. And we're very happy to be a partner in this. And as everybody said before, it's all about partnerships. And it really is. We couldn't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. These men and women have formed a team. You know, we're happy to be on the team. You know, we're just happy to be here. We need some community engagement as well. I'm sure that we will reach out to the community, and the community, we expect some of the community to give us some feedback as well, because we need some, you know, we need to make your community safer. That's why we're all here. We're not standing here for any other reason but to make your community safer. We have maybe 10 agents in Knoxville for ATF. One's going to be here full time. And we feel it's important to be dedicated and not just part-time. So that's why we're here. And again, we're excited and we're looking forward to it. And again, I wanted to thank everybody here, because it's really, when we just kind of get up here and say the same thing, it really isn't the same thing. It really is a partnership and a dedication. And I've seen it around here. I've seen it in this area, and everybody works together because you need it out here. So we're here to do that, and hopefully, you know, and I don't hope, I know it's going to be successful, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
So are there any questions? Anybody? Yes, sir.
In the application, did you have to cite a specific problem that you hope to address, whether it's a certain type of drugs, certain type of violence? I mean, was there a specific problem that you wanted to address?
The application is specific, both with respect to examples. IDA is concerned about making sure that funding will be successful, and so there were specific examples cited about the operations of the 7th Task Force and what they had been able to do in the past, essentially suggesting that this would be an effective way to dedicate federal resources because there was an effective partner on the ground ready to go. And in terms of concerns, as I mentioned, we have I-75 in Anderson County, and there were specific examples provided with regard to the trafficking of narcotics in that north-south corridor that I-75 represents. Specifically, we talked about heroin and methamphetamine and cocaine.
2 o'clock, I don't think I was sleeping. Now, this application has been accepted already, or is it just being applied for?
No, it has been accepted. We have
The
received.
amount of money you receive a year or annually?
It's currently, I think Mr. Overbay said 130,000, and there have been additional purchases of equipment for us in addition to that.
And as you guys always work together, we can just go to Washington and get them to kind of work like you guys.
Anyone else?
When you say equipment, what do you mean? Like, what kind of equipment will we be getting down here to better tackle and address drug trafficking?
Some of the equipment would be covert type law enforcement equipment that I don't want to describe in particular, but it would include computers, furniture, things of that nature.
I guess when at home, maybe like, is drug trafficking that bad in Anderson County?
Drug trafficking is bad everywhere. We're not basing our application on so much local problems as the opportunity to interdict drugs as they are traveling through Anderson County. Our interstate system, wherever it exists, is a natural thoroughfare for the movement of narcotics and other illegal things, whether it's human trafficking or other issues. And so we have a nexus of interstate systems here in the Knoxville area, as Mr. Overbay said, with I-40 and I-75 converging in our backyard. That's a principal problem. I-75, being a north-south route, shares the same issues with I-95 to our east. These are ways to move narcotics from our southern portion of the country to the populated areas in the north.
So once you're designated a high-density drug trafficking area, do you stay? Does that designation stay, or do you have to apply again?
That's a great question for our HIDA representative.
I'm going to ask Monty to correct me if I say anything wrong, but generally, assuming the performance is there, you will stay a designated HIDA county, and the funding will remain. Part of what the Office of National Drug Control Policy has asked each of the HIDAs across the United States is to make sure the task forces that have been funded in the past are continuing to operate. And if we come across a county that is no longer operating, then we ask for them to be undesignated. But as far as Anderson County and the 7th District Criminal Justice Task Force, we have every expectation for it to meet the performance requirements and to continue to be a HIDA designated county. And just to amplify on the foregoing question, and General Clark, as General Clark said, I-75 presents a major corridor going from the United States-Canadian border down through Detroit, down into Tennessee, onto Atlanta, and on south of there. It is a major drug trafficking corridor. And we have had several prosecutions. I'm sure David could tell you more about those, but we've had several prosecutions in this district, in our Knoxville and Chattanooga offices, directly related to drugs that have originated either coming across from Canada or originating in Detroit and being trafficked in East Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
So the 7th Judicial District Crime Task Force will be the HIDA Task Force?
That's right.
And do you know how the 132,000 will be used?
Yes, there's a budget that is part of this proposal, and it would be parceled out among overtime, travel, training, equipment, and money that's used to fund undercover operations. And probably the money funding undercover operations would be the largest slice of that pie.
And there will be a full-time ATF agent in Anderson County?
Yes, sir.
Where will that person be stationed?
With the task force at their location.
Where's that?
We don't disclose the location. Believe it or not, some criminals like to perform counter surveillance, and these folks are operating undercover in unmarked vehicles for much of their workday. So it's important that their identities and location not be disclosed.
What kind of message do you think this sends to people who are part of the network that traffic drugs from one side of the country to the other and through our communities?
Well, I would be less than honest if I didn't tell you I hope they get the message that Anderson County is a really bad place for them to be. East Tennessee, a bad place for them to be. As Mr. Overbay said, criminals do not recognize our county or municipal boundaries. They may not recognize our state boundaries. They don't care. But we want them to know this is not a good place for them to operate. There is a counterintelligence and a thought process behind organized crime. And so we hope they get that message that this is not a good place for them to operate. And if they don't, we'll take care of it another one.
Do some of those drugs make it back into our community and in our neighborhoods? Drugs that they're trying to move along, do those drugs make it back into our community?
Sure. The drugs that are found in Anderson County, Knox County, Blount County, Shelby County, across Tennessee and our nation typically don't originate there. They come from somewhere else. And so part of our mission is to try and interdict those drugs, to make it more difficult for them to get those drugs from the point of origin to the point of consumption.
So in many ways, this grant helps protect other communities in East Tennessee as well?
Absolutely. We're all interrelated. And so ultimately it's about making our people and families and communities safer.
Am I reading this map correctly that a lot of these other counties, surrounding counties, except for maybe Morgan and Union, have been designated
Yes.
HIDA counties?
Yes, that's correct. It might be important to note that being designated a HINA county is one tier of participation, and then having a task force funded by HIDA is a second tier of participation, and we're thrilled to have both here in Anderson County.
Are you guys seeing a lot of activity connected to either cartels or specific drug gangs that have passed through our borders?
Director?
We are. I can't go in depth with some of these cases, but we do have connections that relate to cartels south of the border. I think it's important to note methamphetamine used to be a pretty commonly homegrown thing or homemade thing. Those days are going behind us as fast as we can imagine, yet methamphetamine is still extraordinarily prominent in the area, and that's because the Mexican cartels that operate south of our border have found it more profitable for them to make it in mass quantities rather than these home cooks to make it locally. And so a lot of this meth that we encounter here originated in Mexico. So I think to follow up with your question, yes, absolutely, these narcotics are coming from usually the southwest up here.
Have you made any arrests yet? Part of the HIDA?
HIDA will go into effect January 1, so no, not yet. But the task force has made many arrests and has a very successful past.
Are there any success stories that stand out to you? I know you had, seems like there was a reference on Department of Justice page, but are there certain success stories that stand out to you?
Well,
CTF was involved with it.
I guess faint praise would be there have been a number of instances where they have made significant arrests involving large quantities of drugs. One that stands out in my mind is something I think you've written about in the past, and that was an instance where a foreign national was shipping drugs into Anderson County, selling them over the internet. They were arriving in Anderson County and then being distributed and shipped across the country. That foreign national we indicted and charged as a result of the task force's efforts. With the help of federal partners, he was taken into custody in Abu Dhabi, UAE, and we had him transported back to New York, and CTF agents took custody of him there. So just an example of how interconnected we are and how drugs can originate, not only not in our community, but many times not in our country. But the CTF was successful in reaching out and interdicting that. Any other questions? Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate your time. Merry Christmas, everyone.